Welcome to the Stringjoy Show. I am Ryan. No matter what instrument you play, whether it be guitar or bass, drums, keyboards, the way you interact with that instrument the most is through recorded music, listening to records. We listen to records all the time, or songs on Spotify, because you can't take a live band with you in the car. You can't put a live band in your earbuds and listen to them while you go for a jog. It used to be that recording was something that only the rich bands could do because you would have to rent expensive studio time and get an engineer and a producer and all of that kind of stuff. But now in 2022, we're all recording at home. Everybody, even the professionals, are recording at home and sending in their tracks. So we should know how to record our guitars. Over the course of the next few videos, I don't know how many videos we're going to do exactly, and I may actually spread them out over the course of a couple of months, I'm not sure. But we're going to talk seriously about recording guitars. And the first video that I'm going to do today is about proper ways to mic a guitar cabinet. We're going to go over a bunch of different cabinet styles and a couple of different techniques, but we're going to be sticking with one main technique, and that comes from Mr. Steve Albini. I learned how to mic an amp by playing shows. Every night you would see a sound guy come up, they'd find the center of your cone, they'd grab a 57, which this is not, but they would go just a little bit off there. They would leave it there, and that was it. And I have been on sessions where that was the same method that the engineer came in and mic'd up my amp with. And that's fine, but I think we can do better. If you think about just proximity, right? Like, let's say you dial in the sound that you want to hear out of your amp, and you're standing right here. You finally get that sound that you like, and then you go to play your show and you decide to put your head right here. Because that's what you're hearing. So when I read an article saying that Steve Albini likes to set his mics center and then back about 12 to 14 inches, that made a lot of sense to me, and I couldn't wait to try it out. So let's take this right here, which is a Cascade Fathead. It's a ribbon mic. A beautiful thing about a ribbon mic as well is that it has a figure 8 pattern. So the sound will actually go in, up, and over. So it will take from both sides, but it will also pull from the room a little bit. So these are really, really great mics for recording amplifiers. All right, so this distance right here should have sounded like the amp sounded when I dialed it in, and I stood right back about here and dialed it in. Close miking has a purpose. If this were a relatively bright amp or a thin sounding amp, then moving closer is a good idea. Or if you pulled back this far and it was a little bit thin, you want a little bit more girth to it, let's move it in. So let's move it in all the way and off center a little bit like we typically would. And let's just compare the sounds between this and what we just listened to. All right, so this method is the method that I typically use, and I know that there's a large faction of the recording society out there who believes that a guitar amp should never be mic'd with more than one mic, but I don't subscribe to that. I think the more, the merrier. And I actually like a nice stereo pair on the front. And I typically like to use a ribbon microphone for the warmth and then a condenser microphone. In my case, I use what I think is an exceptionally warm microphone, which is the Cascade Fathead, and what I think is a very bright microphone, which is the C414 XLS. And so what you end up getting is a lot of the low end gets captured from here and a lot of the warmth, and then a lot of the presence get captured out of here. Now, much like with the single microphone, this is not as easy as just putting two microphones in front of the amplifier and hoping for the best. You do need to put a little bit of thought behind this. With two microphones, you do always run the risk of being out of phase. So the easiest way to fix that is to make sure that these two mics are on the same plane, or at least as close as possible, so that sound is hitting them both at the same time. I always get made fun of when I'm on sessions and I pull this out, but first thing I'll do is I will literally just make sure that they measure out exactly the same. And then what I'll do is I'll record a couple samples, go into the room, listen to it. If they sound like they're even a little bit out of phase, I'll move one a little bit forward, move one a little bit back. And at that point, you can kind of get a good idea for it. You definitely know when it clicks though. It's kind of like when you're tuning a guitar and you play both the notes together and you hear them going off and then they eventually pull together and you're like, that's in tune. That's kind of the way it is with this too. You'll be playing with it and you'll be moving them and you'll just know when you hit it. If you like the sound of two mics over one, then you might actually like adding a third. And for that, we have an ambient or a room mic, as it were. And for that, I typically like to go back straight on, but just back, 8 feet, as much as I can get. And I use a condenser mic, and you just kind of blend it in. It sounds great. I know that Steve Albini runs his on the floor. And I've seen other people do lots of other wacky things like trying to catch reflections off of walls and stuff like that. I just set it straight on and back. And realistically, it's just kind of one of those things that it's there. If you want to use it when you're mixing, go for it. If not, not a big deal. But I typically will grab a room sound just in case I need it later. All right, so now we have a 4x12 cabinet. This is a very popular cabinet that people use. And I've seen people do this different ways. Sometimes all four speakers are very different and you want to capture a very specific sound out of one of those speakers. And so in that case, you would basically do the same thing where you would find the center of the speaker you want to mic and then pull it back good 12 to 14 inches. That's how I would do it. Now, if you don't have a specific speaker that you like and you are hearing with your ears the sound of the full four, typically what I like to do is I like to take this one microphone, move it more towards the center, and then kind of down just a little bit. And I'll listen a few times over, moving it backwards and forwards, left and right, up and down, until I find the spot that I think is kind of the center of where these four speakers are converging. The criticisms that you hear specifically of the JCM 800 and the JMP before it is that they're bright amps, And I wouldn't necessarily say bright. I would say that there's lots of presence, and I would say that there's lots of upper mids, and I would say that the low end is very, very, very tight. And so that gives an impression of it being a bright amplifier. And there are some tricks that we can do to kind of soften up and mush up that low end a little bit. Very simply, we can add another microphone. So we have the condenser here, and then we're adding a ribbon mic, which is a very warm mic. And again, you want to make sure that these are on the same plane so that you're not dealing with phasing issues. And if that isn't dark enough, we'll start moving these in. If you have a 2x12 cabinet, you can do pretty much the same thing. You have the same options available to you as we used here. You can have a single mic straight on to the cone and then backed off about 13 inches. And that will give you a really good sound isolating one speaker in your 2x12. You can take two microphones and try to find where the sounds of those speakers are kind of converging and place two mics there on the same plane so that you don't have phasing issues. You can also mic each speaker individually, again, right on the cone, back about 12 to 14 inches, and then making sure that both of your microphones are going to be on the same plane. Of course, there are no hard and fast rules to any of this. If you like the sound of close miking and it gets you with the sound that's in your head, great. Keep doing that. If you go even crazier than that and you use 4 mics and you're micing the back of an open back cabinet and you're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but it's getting you the sound that you hear in your head, then awesome. This method right here is the only one that I found that gives me the sound that I'm looking for almost every single time. Of course, this stuff takes a ton of experimentation. You really have to play with it every single time. It is not just a plug and play type thing. Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, I don't have the time for that, nor the interest, that's fine. You want something that's plug and play? Well, you're gonna wanna stay tuned for the next video that we do on recording because we are going to talk about direct boxes, going ampless. And you know what? It's a really, really decent option in 2022. So until then, I'll see you when I see you.